If someone laughed in your face for dreaming big, would you walk away or prove them wrong? Imagine standing in a glass-walled office, your future on the line, and the room waiting for you to fail. What would you do? Tell me in the comments before you watch how this ends. Manhattan. Late afternoon. Sun melting into the skyline. The executive floor felt like a private sky. David Johnson, 14, stood beside his mother, Grace, who had come in to finish a long housekeeping shift. His backpack hung by one strap. His eyes did not. Across the desk, Hassan al-Mansouri leaned back, amused. He liked clean answers and quick wins. Today looked like both. "You speak how many?" he asked, smiling at the kid's calm posture. 10, he said. "I can list them if you'd like." Grace touched his sleeve. "David." He gave her a soft nod. "It's okay, Mom." Hassan's smile widened. "Go on, then." English, Spanish, French, German, Arabic, Mandarin, Russian, Italian, Portuguese, Japanese. David's voice was steady, clear. No showmanship, just facts on air. The room shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just a new gravity. "Anyone can memorize a list," Hassan said, folding his hands. "I agree. That's why I brought proof." He opened his worn backpack and set down a neat folder. Certificates from the Metro City Language Center, proficiency results, program completions from the city library, an advanced simultaneous interpretation course completed online, dates that showed a 3-year climb, stamps, signatures, careful order. Hassan skimmed, looking for cracks. The more he checked, the more the paper held. Grace watched, unsure what was happening, but certain something was changing. Hassan looked up. "Fine, say something in Arabic." David met his eyes and answered in clear, careful, classical Arabic, formal, precise. No phrasebook greeting, a composed sentence, respectful tone, proper endings. It landed like a key turning in a lock. Hassan's smile thinned. He understood every word. The grammar was right. The sound was right. The respect was real. "Where did you learn this?" he asked. "At the public library. They have free language programs every afternoon. I started when I was 11. "Why languages?" he asked, and this time there was no mockery in it. "Because I wanted to understand people. When you speak to someone in their language, you stop being a stranger." The sentence sat between them. Simple, heavy. Hassan cleared his throat. "One line doesn't make you fluent." "True," David said. "May I show you something else?" He took out a tablet, tapped, and in moments a professor answered a video call from an office across the world. David greeted her in Mandarin, natural pace, clean tones, context-aware phrasing. They spoke for a minute. The conversation flowed the way real conversations do, register shifting, word choice adapting, tiny pauses that mean understanding, not guessing. "Hello," she said in English, turning to the camera. "David has been an exceptional student in my business interpretation course. His performance would stand out in any advanced class." The Tokyo meeting came faster than anyone expected. A gray morning, then a clear afternoon. Conference room lights warm, city skyline bright.
Hassan adjusted his notes. David sat to the side with a small headset, a legal pad, and 3 pens lined up like promises. "You're here to support," Hassan said quietly. "School first. If anything feels off, say so." "Agreed," David replied. "I'll keep pace and context, clear and respectful." The call began. Greetings in careful English, then in Japanese. David's voice moved with the rhythm of the room, soft when introductions needed space, precise when details demanded edges. When a key phrase about timeline landed with the weight of immediate rather than time-sensitive, he stepped in gently. "Clarifying," he said in Japanese. "The team means priority within the quarter, not this week. The intention is focus, not rush." Faces on both sides relaxed. Shoulders dropped a centimeter. Real understanding began. A second moment surfaced around commitment versus intention. In some rooms, those words feel the same. Here, they did not. David bridged it with care, offering a choice of terms that signaled respect without overpromising. He tracked terms on his pad and mirrored them back so both teams heard the same music. By the final hour, the conversation felt like a shared map. The teams aligned on scope, quality checks, and after-support. Hassan watched the flow, not as a spectacle, but as a standard. This is what clarity feels like, he thought. This is what respect sounds like. The call ended with bows, smiles, and a plan. It wasn't just a deal. It was a new way of working. As the room emptied, Hassan turned to David. "Day one," he said, half amazed, half proud. "We lived the pledge." David capped his pen. "Day one," he echoed. "Tomorrow, we do it again." But the story didn't end with one call. It grew legs and walked into people's lives. 6 months later, the Bronx Public Library buzzed with a different kind of energy. Tables ringed with notebooks, a whiteboard covered in timelines, verbs, and diagrams of ideas. On one wall, a simple display. The first 50 certificates from the Young Talent Fellowship, students from across the city who joined the Access program born from a promise. Hassan sat at a round table with a small group, Maria, 15, eyes bright, Carlos, 13, fingers drumming a rhythm of curiosity, a few others leaning forward, already planning futures. Grace stood nearby in a tailored blazer, greeting families, balancing logistics like a conductor. "Is it true you hired a 14-year-old as a language consultant?" Maria asked, grinning. "It's true," Hassan said, smiling back. "With clear guardrails, school first, and mentors. Smartest decision I've made." David, now 15, glanced up from a stack of international briefs. He gave a small wave and returned to annotating a paragraph. One eye on the text, one ear on the room. "What changed first?" Carlos asked. "Me," Hassan answered without hesitation. "I thought decisiveness made me right. I learned that listening makes me effective." A librarian rolled out a cart of dictionaries and tablets. She set a small plaque on the table. "Words are bridges." It was the line from Hassan's old newsletter, now the theme of the program. A reporter from a business magazine stopped by. "Quick question," she said. "What's the biggest lesson you've taken from this?" Hassan nodded towards David. That leadership isn't about being the loudest. It's about creating space for the best ideas to be heard, especially when they come from unexpected places. "And you?" the reporter asked David. He thought for a breath. "Never let appearances set your ceiling. Learn deeply, prepare well, be kind, keep proof of your work, and speak to people in their language, words, and respect." The reporter thanked them and moved on. The group settled into a workshop. David opened a quick session on micro-clarity, how to check meaning in 3 steps. Ask, mirror, confirm. Students practiced with role plays in Spanish, English, and Japanese. Laughter cut the tension. Wins stacked up in small, proud moments. Grace watched from the door. 6 months had reshaped her days. New responsibilities, a team that trusted her, training she had long deserved. The job title mattered less than the way people now looked at her, eye to eye. Inside David's second folder were 2 items, a 1-page pledge and a plan, with dates, roles, and simple guardrails. He had written it in plain language, the way he wished big decisions were always written. First, David said, a clear path forward. He read the points, steady and respectful. Fair opportunity pledge. Decisions based on skill and effort, documented with simple criteria everyone can understand. Communication reset. A small internal team to review global messaging for accuracy and cultural clarity. Weekly check-ins, measurable goals. Access program. Library partnerships, mentorship circles, and scholarships for motivated students who need a bridge into the industry. Safeguards. No retaliation for raising concerns in good faith. Open office hours with HR and an outside advisor to keep trust high. Pilot role. A part-time junior language consultant role with David, with adult supervision, limited hours, and school-first scheduling. Grace listened, eyes bright. Years of quiet courage stood a little taller. Hassan read the page twice. The requests were not loud. They were precise. They would cost time. They would build value. And the second item? David slid over a slim binder. A review of moments when lines were crossed, he said carefully. Not to shame anyone, to be honest about the pattern. Some comments I heard in shared spaces were unkind. Some decisions favored the familiar over the capable. I logged what I could, where it was allowed, and I kept timestamps. I included suggested fixes. Hassan turned a few pages. On each, the problem was described in gentle language, followed by a practical solution. Replace a closed-door habit with a transparent process. Broaden how candidates are sourced. Offer language support where miscommunication kept talent quiet. Train managers on clarity and respect. Invite anonymous questions. Measure progress monthly, not yearly. In short, David said, we can make this a place where skill speaks loudest. Hassan's face softened, not because the truth was easy, but because the path was clear. And if I say no, then I'll share my report with the proper channels. Not to hurt you, to make things fair, but I'm hoping you'll choose to lead the change yourself. The words were calm. They left room for dignity. Grace watched both men. She had spent years cleaning around closed doors. Today, a door felt open. Hassan set the binder down and breathed out slow. I was proud of being decisive. I mistook that for always being right. David nodded. Leaders can be both decisive and humble. That's when teams fly. A long pause. Then Hassan reached for a pen. If we do this, we do it fully, no half measures. David had one more page. I also wrote simple protections for my mom's new role. Fair salary, clear duties, training, and a thank you clause for the team that kept this place running when times were hard. Grace covered her mouth. She blinked fast and set her shoulders. I can do the work, she said. I've been doing it for years. I know, Hassan replied. I should have seen it sooner. He signed the pledge. Then he signed the pilot role for David, with school and mentorship written in bold. David pressed a button on a small device. For clarity, he said, I recorded this meeting and the signed pledge. I'll store a copy with my mom and one with your office. It protects everyone and prevents any confusion later. Hassan let out a short, surprised laugh. Not sharp, not cruel. A laugh that knew he had just met someone who prepared better than most adults he knew. You think of everything. "I try," said David. "But there's one more thing I found. It's about you." Hassan looked up. David took a thin, yellowed newsletter from his folder. The cover showed a black and white photo of teenagers in a library reading room. In the back row, a familiar face, young, thin, eyes on fire, stood beside a book cart. "This is from a community center near your first apartment. You helped translate letters for new arrivals. You taught yourself English there. You started a small language circle after school. The article calls you the student who sees words as bridges." Hassan stared at the page. The room around him blurred. He remembered the old desk, the warm hum of a dusty radiator, the kindness of a volunteer who pushed 2 extra dictionaries his way when no one was looking. He had not thought of that in years. He had not allowed himself to. "You didn't bring this to win," Hassan said softly. "No," David replied. "I brought it to remind you who you already are." Grace looked from the photo to the man behind the desk. Sometimes the most important mirror is the one someone else holds up. Hassan closed his eyes, then opened them with a clarity that hadn't been there at the start of the hour. "We'll do the pledge. We'll build the program. We'll reset how we communicate, inside and out. And we'll track it like we track any important goal." He stood and offered his hand to Grace. "Will you accept a promotion to facilities supervisor? We'll provide training and a competitive salary. You've earned it." Grace took his hand. "I accept." He turned to David. "Part-time consultant, school first, mentors, tools, and the freedom to say no when it crosses your limits." David smiled. "Deal." They signed, copies were made. The pledge was scanned and sent to the teams who needed to see it first. The sun slid lower between towers, and the office lights warmed. But that wasn't the end. As David zipped his backpack, he placed 2 identical flash drives on the desk. He said, "Backups. One stays here. One goes in my mom's safe. It keeps our agreement clear." Hassan nodded. "Transparency it is." He glanced again at the old newsletter. A teenager stared back from another decade, daring him to be better. He picked up the pledge and pinned a copy to the glass board behind his desk where every visitor would see it. "Tomorrow we begin," he said. "Tomorrow," David agreed. "And there's a reason we begin now." Hassan tilted his head. "Which is?" "Because there's a deal on your calendar next week. It's with a team from Tokyo. I've been studying their industry terms in Japanese. If you want, I can assist. It will be a landmark moment to live our pledge on day 1. Clear communication, shared respect." Hassan almost smiled. "You really thought this through." "Always," David said, slinging the backpack onto one shoulder. But the real test was still ahead, and the lesson would reach far beyond one office. The call ended. Quiet returned. Not the same quiet as before. Grace exhaled. She looked at her son, as if she was seeing a new horizon line. Hassan placed the tablet down gently. "You're 14. "The calendar says so," David said with a small smile. Hassan's gaze drifted to the window, then back. "Why are you here, David? Your mother could have lost her job today." David glanced at Grace. She gave a tiny nod. "Go on." David said, careful and respectful, "I heard your call yesterday. You were speaking with partners overseas in Arabic. A few word choices changed urgency and timelines. It created confusion. The deal sounded at risk. Hassan went still. He remembered the puzzled silence. He had blamed it on the signal. David continued, "I've been studying business Arabic for 2 years. I wrote down the moments that shifted meaning. I thought you'd want to know." He pulled out a thin report labeled Communication Audit, Public Materials. Inside were samples from press releases, transcripts and web statements, notes in the margins, side-by-side phrasing with clearer alternatives. Patterns circled, not accusations, solutions. Hassan read the first page, then the second. He moved faster. Somewhere around page 5, the air changed again. The boy wasn't guessing. He was mapping blind spots with care. The recommendations were specific, practical, and respectful to culture and tone. "Why do this?" Hassan asked quietly. "Because value isn't where you start. It's what you can contribute. I wanted to show you what I can do." Hassan looked over at Grace, steady, tired, proud. For the first time, he saw the path behind her. Years of early mornings and late nights to hold a family together. Then he looked at David. 10 languages, a city library card, a backpack full of proof. He set the report down. "You've given me a lot to think about." David nodded. "There's one more thing I need to share, and I want to handle it the right way." The room cooled. Hassan waited. "For months," David said, "I've been reviewing how messages move inside this company and how people are considered for opportunities. I heard conversations in common areas about who is and isn't a fit. I kept notes. I recorded where I was allowed to. I saved emails and public statements that didn't match. The pattern felt unfair." Grace's hands tightened around the handle of her cleaning caddy. She knew the cost of unfairness. She also knew the cost of silence. David set a small digital recorder on the desk. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he said. "I want to make it right." So I wrote a proposal. He slid a second folder across the desk. It wasn't a threat. It was a plan. But that wasn't the whole story.
During a break, Hassan walked to the wall of certificates. He traced the edge of one with his finger. A name, a date, a door opening. "You built this," he said to David, who had come to stand beside him. "We built it," David corrected gently. "It only works because you chose to lead it." Hassan nodded. "And because you reminded me who I was." The afternoon closed with a small ceremony. Students came forward to receive their next-term learning grants, library-backed stipends for courses, language labs, coding boot camps, design classes. Each student shared one sentence about a goal. Simple sentences. Mighty gravity. Before people dispersed, Maria raised her hand once more. "What if I'm afraid to try?" she asked. "What if I fail?" David smiled. "Fear is honest. Let it sit in the chair next to you while you study. Then keep going. The only failure that sticks is choosing not to show up." The room hummed in agreement. That evening, back at headquarters, Hassan paused outside his office. The pledge still hung on the glass board where anyone could see it. He had kept a copy of the old newsletter nearby, too, a compass disguised as paper. Grace stepped out of a meeting with facilities leads, laughing with 2 supervisors about a scheduling puzzle they'd just solved. She gave Hassan a nod that said, "We've got it handled." Inside, a stack of partner proposals waited. On top was a short note in David's handwriting.
checked phrasing on pages 3 and 7, mirrored terms for clarity, added a glossary for the team. Hassan picked up a pen and signed where he needed to sign. He didn't feel like he was giving orders. He felt like he was joining a team with a better playbook. On his way out, he found David in the hallway, backpack slung over one shoulder, heading to a community class he now co-taught on weekends. "One last thing," Hassan said. "I never thanked you for documenting everything that day. It protected all of us." David nodded. Documentation keeps trust honest. It's not about catching people. It's about keeping promises clear. Hassan extended his hand. David shook it. No ceremony, just a quiet understanding. As the elevator doors opened, Hassan glanced at his reflection and almost didn't recognize the man. Not the suit, the posture. He wasn't bracing anymore. He was building. Here's the twist most people miss. The biggest win wasn't the deals or the headlines. It was the change in rooms no one films. The way a leader chose humility. The way a team chose fairness. The way a kid with a library card chose to share his gifts. If you were in David's place, would you have stepped forward or stayed silent to keep the peace? Tell me below. Your answer might be the nudge someone else needs today. The next month brought another partnership. Different language, new industry, same principles. The fellowship expanded to a second branch. A quiet note went out to staff. If you have a skill you learned outside traditional paths, we want to hear it. The inbox filled with stories. Grace tucked a printed photo into her planner. David at the library table. A circle of students leaning in. A world of bridges waiting to be built. And somewhere in a file drawer, 2 copies of a recorded pledge sat untouched. Not as leverage, but as a reminder of a day when everyone in the room chose the harder, better thing. Stay with this channel. The next story begins where this one leaves off, with a choice, a voice, and the proof to back it up.